Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Health, Hope, and Happiness podcast brought to you by Stifel. My name is Dan Mochi, and I'm the Mission Advancement Director here at CNA. On today's podcast, we welcome back child and adolescent behavioral health trauma lead therapist, Mary Kreitz. In today's episode, Mary, we're going to be talking about kids, their routines, and summer schedules. So we're a little bit halfway through summer, so good time to maybe start getting back into schedule mode. So this is going to be a fascinating topic, especially as I just said, we're a little bit a quarter to halfway through summer. But before we start, as always, give us a little preview of what people can expect today.
Well, really, this is all about setting up families for success by drawing attention to something that's just so easy to overlook. And yet it still makes a huge difference that really being intentional about structure and routine can be hugely beneficial to families at all times of the year.
Yeah, one of the things has been a thread through these podcasts, even with Dr. Steve Grape, is the intentionality behind what either in that situation athletes would do, and in this situation, what parents and families should be doing. So intentionality is a big key.
Yeah, it's just easy to have things slip your mind sometimes. So having somebody point it out sometimes just makes us more mindful.
Great. So as we dive into this topic, let's start with an easy question. Do children and adolescents really need structure and routine during the summer?
Short answer, yes. Everyone needs structure and routine. Remember during the pandemic when everything was shut down and how exhausted we all felt?
Mm-hmm.
That was because we lost our structure and routine. Children flourish when they're provided with repetition, predictability, and routine. And in the summertime, you hear it, kids complain about being bored. They find things to fill their time, and often they find things that get them in trouble or that we don't want them to be doing. So setting up a structure and a routine lets children know what's expected of them so that they can learn to anticipate the consequences of their behavior, which is really a good life lesson for every child to learn. As they move through a familiar structure, children start to feel confident and competent. And we really want that because that's a really good foundation that they're going to carry through the rest of their life. And routines help children to feel safe. Not knowing what to expect next can actually trigger anxiety, which results in more arguing and more fighting and those just snarky attitudes that nobody enjoys getting from their kid. And so having a well-established routine provides predictability that just really helps kids to feel safe and secure. And then that means they'll be much calmer and more cooperative. And through the school year, school provides a lot of that structure and routine for them. We just don't want them to lose those benefits when summer comes around.
Great. Great way to kind of set this conversation up. So people might be thinking, I want my children to be able to relax and kind of let the day flow naturally. How might you respond to this type of concern?
Sure. Our bodies have their own natural rhythms and routines. And so we naturally have sleep and wake cycles, times of day that we get hungry, and times when maybe our energy increases or our energy dips. Our bodies love it when we have a basic routine with consistent times to wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, regular meal times. It helps us to feel more rested in the morning, to think more clearly. We tend to have less aches and pains when we have a better routine. And our immune system actually functions better so that we can fight off all those illnesses and minor infections and things like that. And on top of that, our brains love predictability. They love being able to anticipate what's coming next and what will you need at different points during the day or during the week. So if you had to make a conscious decision about everything that you did during the day, what are the options available? What might happen if I pick this option versus this option? It gets really exhausting. That takes a lot of mental energy. And so having a structure and a routine helps you to just organize your thoughts so that you can make a decision more easily and feel prepared to do the activities that you do and feel less drained as you go through the day.
Yeah, I would like to be less drained as I go through my day too.
Right? Wouldn't we all?
Yeah. So I'm sure we have some listeners out there thinking structure and routine is stifling. And I don't want to be mindlessly following a predetermined routine and never get to do what I feel like doing in the moment. I want to be more fun and spontaneous and decide what to do as I go along. So summer should be fun. I think we all agree with that. But what would you say to someone who wants to keep things a little bit unstructured and spontaneous?
Well, I would agree that sometimes structure and routine can feel tedious and stifling. Usually that happens when the structure is too rigid. Um, we don't need to plan every minute of every day. That's too much. Children benefit from having choices and options. That helps them to become good decision makers and to learn how to think for themselves. Um, if your structure is too rigid, they're not getting chances to make decisions. And so you don't want to go that far. But on the other hand, if all decisions are made spontaneously and there's never any structure at all, the result is you have chaos, which is also stressful. And in fact, it often is more stressful. And really, what we want to do is find that balance in between. We want some flexibility in the routine so that you have time to do what you want, some ability to change from day to day or moment to moment, be able to make some spontaneous choices in there. You want to be able to adjust when life happens, because things do happen that are unexpected. So maybe the weather doesn't cooperate with whatever your plans are for doing something outside, or when the Wi-Fi crashes and you have to flex at the last minute to come up with something else to do. And honestly, we've got holidays coming up in a couple of days. We often flex and adjust our schedules when special occasions or holidays come up. Having a routine and a structure doesn't mean you don't get to have fun. And if your structure is getting in the way of having fun, then you probably do want to adjust it, because that a pretty good indicator that it's too rigid. But being able to have some of those things in place just frees up our mental energy so that when those spontaneous decisions come along, we have the ability to adapt and adjust and think it through and make good choices in those moments.
Nice. So my kids are now 21 and 24, but when they were a little bit younger, they were active. But usually in June, my wife and I often let the kids sleep in and be more carefree. And as July approached in August, then we started getting them back on their schedules. Is that helpful or more hurtful for a child?
Um, it can be both. It depends on how it's done. Uh, Changes always require a period of adjustment, and how well we adapt depends on how big the change is, how quickly we have to adjust, and whether or not we want that change to happen. So think of it as having jet lag when you're going on a trip. If you're just changing like a 1 hour time zone change, it's not that bad. It's a little draining, but you can adjust quickly. When you travel to the other side of the planet, it's a bigger change. It's more exhausting, and you really feel it because the change is more dramatic. You might not notice it at the start of a trip because you're excited about what you're going to be doing on your vacation, got a lot of energy to be able to pour into it. When you're coming home, you feel it more strongly because it's maybe the change that you didn't really want. And when you can adjust your schedule gradually over a longer period of time, it's easier to adjust than if you have to make a sudden change over a short period of time. And it's so much harder to adjust when you feel like you're giving up something that you enjoy. And sometimes that's where we set kids up because they like being able to stay up late. That's a privilege that they enjoy. And getting to sleep in later is something that they like. So when we start to take that away from them, they feel like they're losing out. And so they fight us more on it. And so we have to just be really careful. If we want to give them more flexibility or adjust what their bedtime or their wake time is going to be during the summer, we just have to make sure that we're not waiting to the last minute to change it back and like snatch
Right.
that privilege away from them that they really enjoyed having, because that just makes the whole thing harder. And again, it sets them up to be more cranky, more argumentative, and nobody wants to deal with that. So we can help ourselves out by just trying to gradually ease them back into the routine they'll need for school.
Nice. So it sounds like there's a lot of benefits to having structure and routine, but it also takes a lot of work to maybe set these things up. How do you convince parents who are already busy, tired, and stressed out that this is something they should be doing?
It does take a lot of work, no doubt about it, but we have to think of it like an investment. It cuts down on the chaos. It helps the adults to be more organized, more in control, and less stressed out, because when the parents are less stressed out, the kids are going to be less stressed out. And once you have a well-established routine, children can follow the routines without needing you to constantly give them directions. What do I do next? That means that you're then free to do other things. It cuts down on a lot of the arguments, because when you think about how much time is spent arguing with kids over little things, ordinary things, having a well-established routine leads to less arguments about what should be done and when it should be done. It is time for bed. No argument, no negotiation. It's just time. And yeah, a kid needs to register their complaint, but then it's still time for bed. And that's okay. And once you have the established routine, it just feels normal. And so again, our bodies adjust to that. Kids will start to feel tired around bedtime, and they'll start to naturally wake up at the time that's their wake up time. They start to naturally follow the routine, even though they may still complain about it. They'll naturally follow it with a lot more ease. And that gives you, as a parent, a better chance to predict how family members are going to respond. So then you can plan for success and prevent the blow-ups from happening. So you know, okay, we're going to be staying up extra late because we're going to see the fireworks. That also means that kid's going to be tired and maybe cranky on, even fall asleep in the car on the way home. Or maybe they're going to need a little bit extra in the morning because they've missed some sleep. But then trying to get them back into their routine as quickly as possible so that they can be successful the next day or the day after. It just helps them to have more fun because they're arguing less. And then when it comes time to get ready for school, the transition back into that school routine is less of a jolt, and they can ease their way into a successful start for the school year.
Yeah, I know with my kids, it was much easier when everybody was congenial and well rested and not getting those, as you said earlier, those snarky remarks back.
Right?
But they're also kids and they have their feelings too, so you got to
Yes, they
expect a
do.
little bit.
Yes, they're allowed to express their feelings, but that doesn't mean we change the rules.
Right. So let's say my kids were back at their younger stage and we wanted to set up a little bit of structure and routine for the family. How do you start? And then what are some of the important things you would consider for setting up that structure and routine?
Okay, well, a really good place to start is by deciding what your family needs. Every family is different, so there isn't a one size fits all. Here's what everybody should be doing. You have to decide, what does your family need to do during the week, and what amount of sleep does your child need? Because that depends on an individual metabolism, but also their age, what kinds of activities they have during the day. So you use that as the basis for your structure. And then you pick out a few things that you really want to have happen at consistent times during the day. So maybe consistent times for wake up and going to bed, maybe consistent meal times. Look at the things that you need to do during the week. So do you have appointments that you need to keep? Or do you have lessons that the kids are going to, maybe music lessons or something like that? Or do they have football practice or other types of things that they need to be at, and just sort of plug those things in, and that becomes the beginning of your routine. And really you can fill in a lot of things in between there, even encouraging some responsibility, maybe assigning a chore that the child needs to do, and deadlines for when it needs to get done. So I'm not going to tell you exactly when you need to do these dishes, but they need to be done by dinner time because we want clean dishes to eat off of. So when you're setting up the routine, you want to decide, are there activities that maybe you need to limit? So maybe setting a 2 hour screen time limit. You can, after 2 hours, you need to stop and go do something else for a while. Or setting up a time limit for use of social media. So maybe you stop social media after 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes families will decide things like no phones at the dinner table. Whatever it is that you want to set up as those limits for your family, that's part of the structure and routine. And then what are the things you want to encourage? So maybe we want kids to get up and move around. So we need to have 30 minutes of exercise a day where you're going to get up and move, whether that is doing something inside or whether it means you go outside and do something, but it needs to be movement. Maybe there's something like piano practice that your child needs to do every day. And so you want to make sure that part of the structure includes time for them to have that practice. Maybe it does include chores that a child is going to be expected to do. And then how you set up the structure, there's lots of different ways to do it. Sometimes you use first then types of routines that first we eat dinner, then you can have a treat. First you clean your room, then you can go play your game. Sometimes we give lists. So a list of tasks that need to be done during the day. And whether that is written as a list on a piece of paper or giving a stack of Post-it notes, and you can arrange the order that those Post-it notes go in, whatever it is, sometimes having it written down though makes it concrete so that it's easier to remember it. And when we're dealing with kids, sometimes they don't have great memories, but being able to also visually see what needs to be done and what I've already accomplished helps to get through the day a little bit easier, because looking back, you can see the stack of things you've either checked off or moved to the done pile. And that feels good, like you've accomplished something. Giving kids some choice in their routine helps. So maybe they get to choose the order of the routines that they're going to do, or maybe they get to choose which chore they're going to do today. Do you want to do laundry today, or do you want to put the dishes away? Which one are you going to do? It's also really important when you're setting up the structure and routine to remember to include the adults. It's not just for the kids, and we have to model following the routine and following the rules, and that we are part of the family. So adults are going to be part of family meals. What chores are you going to do?
Okay.
Chances are, as parents, we're doing tons of chores, but the kids don't always notice that. They think they're the only ones that have to do anything. So when you're making the chore list, include the kids are going to do these, and mom is going to do this, and dad is going to do this. And that way they see, oh, you do a lot. And so, that's a really good thing. And even, joining in to say, okay, we need 30 minutes of exercise. I'm going to join you with that. We're all going to take a walk together, or maybe we're all going to, I love to use Go Noodle for that, like, especially on the days when you can't go outside and move around. So we're all going to turn on a Go Noodle and do a dance marathon together. Like, that's one thing that we can all enjoy, having some fun together, but it also checks that box of exercise and movement for the day. And then the last thing that I would always encourage a family to do when they're setting up a routine is to plan things to look forward to. So what are some activities that the family is going to enjoy? Or what are some little treats that you can work in? So whether that's planning a favorite thing to have for dinner, or a movie that you want to watch together, or even, something fun, like we get to go to the playground, or we get to look forward to something bigger, maybe a day trip that we want to take together. Doesn't have to be like something huge, like, oh, we're going to go to Disneyland, because, that's a lot of money. But including some things that you just know you're going to enjoy gives you something to look forward to during the week.
Nice. So many kids, including mine at the time when they were younger, attended like a vacation Bible school class or went to like Camp Invention. Kids today go to kids college, which didn't exist when my kids were younger, or go to like a theater or sports camp. Do these activities allow kids to maintain a routine on a limited basis and still provide that flexibility during their day?
Yeah, those kinds of activities can be great for providing structure and routine. Really, what you want to look at is how closely do those activities match the normal routine that you want for your family. So does that mean that this kid is going to have to get up extra early compared to others in the family to be able to get to practice? Then they might fight against it more. Why do they get to sleep in when I don't? Or why do I have to go to bed early when other people are still having fun? Well, because you have this. Then it might be, worth it to adjust the whole family's routine. And really, how well do the routines for different members of the family align? So having something for one kid that's super early in the morning and then something for another kid that's way late in the evening might put a real strain on the family. So you have to look at like how these pieces all fit together. But overall, those can do a great job of providing some structure and routine, at least on a temporary basis for the kids while they're attending camp or Bible school or whatever it is they choose to do.
So we all know that the best laid plans sometimes fall apart. What should a parent do if maybe they had good structure and routine, but then things kind of slid away, and now we're trying to get everybody back on track?
So the first thing I would say is own it. Have a family conversation and talk about it. Acknowledge that you let things slide and that you want to get back on track. And then talk together about how you're going to do that. So you don't just come in and say, here's what we're going to do from now on. Boom, boom, boom. Because then it sounds like a dictate and nobody really likes being ordered around that way. But if you say, I've noticed we've all been slacking and we need to get back in the regular routine of things, and here's why. And then include everybody in coming up with a plan for how do you get back on track. And don't overdo it at the beginning. Pick a few things that you want to start with, then add more later on as you go along. But you may find that you don't need to add more, because once you've got those solid basics in place, that does the trick. But be really clear about your expectations and just remember to include that flexibility.
Nice. So we've had a great conversation today. Anything else you'd like to add that you feel like we didn't talk about, or maybe just sort of reinforce it as a closing statement?
Yeah, I just want everybody to remember that structure is not the opposite of fun, that instead we need to think about structure and routine just as tools that we use to help our lives run more smoothly and efficiently, so that we can relax and enjoy more of our time in our life and our time together with our families.
Nice. So as always, Mary, it is a pleasure to have you on the Health, Hope, and Happiness podcast, which again is brought to you by Stifel. Hopefully your insights will help some parents get started to thinking about getting back into school routines. I know that's the bad word in the middle of summer, but we all got to get there. So until the next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you back in the future, Mary.
Thanks, Dan.